And this is our daughter Hannah, and I'm sure many of you have great stories to tell of God's faithfulness, and Hannah's story probably pales in comparison to some of the stories that you can tell. But as we've been preparing for another surgery, it occurred to me that many of you have never heard her story, so we were given permission to share it here tonight. You would never know it now that Hannah was born with a cleft lip and palate. It was a shock to us, and while it wasn't life-threatening, it was life-altering. In the hospital, she was taken to the special care nursery. We had to learn to feed her with a squeezable bottle. We were met with a herd of doctors and therapists and publications that were helpful and informative, but overwhelming. We were told that surgery would need to be done within the first 10 days of her life to have the best outcome, so we began researching. We heard of Dr. Ralph Millard in Miami, Florida, who wrote the textbook on cleft lip and palate surgery. We didn't think we could afford to go there. We were a young, one-income family of 4. So we started interviewing the surgeons in Mobile who performed this type of surgery. We found one who claimed to use the Millard technique, so we trusted him. He performed her first surgery when she was 3 weeks old. One of the hardest things I ever had to do was hand over my tiny baby to a nurse in scrubs and watch her walk out of my sight. Well, the surgery went fine, or so we thought. That's what the surgeon told us. But Hannah wouldn't take a bottle. The next day, the local surgeon released us from the hospital, even though she wasn't eating. Hannah was readmitted for dehydration, and all of the stitches tore out in the skin layer because of her inconsolable crying. I have to admit, I couldn't understand why God would allow this to happen to our baby. Little did I know he was behind the scenes protecting her more than I could have ever imagined. 3 years later, we were preparing for her 4th surgery, and we tried to explain in preschool terms what to expect. She asked, "Is Jesus going to come see me like he did when I was a baby?" I said, "Sure he will. Jesus is always with us." She said, "But is he going to come see me?" I asked her what she meant, and she said, "When I was a baby and the doctors fixed my bobo, Jesus came to see me." I asked her what he looked like. She was 3, almost 4 years old. She said he was tall, taller than Daddy, and his hair was like a rainbow. I asked her what he did, and she said he picked me up and he kissed me right there, and he put me back down. A couple years later, a Bible study led me to read Ezekiel 1:28. You know, Ezekiel's not really a book you usually turn to when you're doing the Bible study, but this one particularly asked us to go to Ezekiel 1:28. I was amazed to read. Like the appearance of a rainbow in the clouds on a rainy day, so was the radiance around him. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. Well, it gets better. About 3 years ago, when we moved back to Mobile, we went to the orthodontist who saw Hannah when she was a baby, when she was little. Dr. Keith Harvey is one of the finest Christian men you'll ever meet, and he had been involved in that first surgery when she was 3 weeks old. But he'd only made an impression of the inside of her mouth, and so he could fit her for other clients. When he saw us again, he remembered us, and we talked about that first surgery. He said, "I remember Hannah because she almost crashed." When he saw the color leave my face, he said, "Well, maybe crash wasn't the right word, but I had to get the impression out quickly, and they had to breathe her down to get her stable again." The surgeon had never told me anything went wrong on the operating table, and I was completely stunned. I told Dr. Harvey the story Hannah had told us about seeing Jesus when she was 3 years old. She told us when she was 3 about seeing him when she was a baby. And then it hit me. When I couldn't see God taking care of my baby, Jesus had been right there with her. He had picked her up and kissed her to let her know he loved her. But he put her back down because he wasn't done with her yet. Dr. Harvey, at that time, 3 years ago, went over to Hannah and said, "Hannah, there's a special purpose for your life, and you need to always listen to the voice of God." Now let me tell you how God eventually knocked us as parents over the head and got us to the right surgeon. While we were in the waiting room of that first surgery, we met a lady who had a son with a cleft palate. She asked if she could put us on her church's prayer list. We gratefully agreed and exchanged phone numbers. About a week after that surgery, she called to check on us. I told her what happened, and she updated her church. Someone from her church told a friend who told a friend. Y'all know how that goes, right? But this time, the news made it to Dr. Millard's daughter in Texas. Now, this man is a world-renowned surgeon. As I said, he wrote the textbook on this surgery. He was nominated as one of only 10 plastic surgeons of the millennium. And by divine appointment, he was at his daughter's house on vacation when she heard the news of Hannah's story. He personally called us and asked us to come to Miami so he could fix everything. We still didn't think we could afford it, and our insurance would only pay 70% of the expenses because we were going out of network. But this time, we wanted the best, and we would have done whatever it took to get to him. This time, we trusted God to provide for us. We prayed, the church we were in prayed, family prayed, and the Lord heard and answered. Dr. Millard called us to tell us that he would accept what our insurance paid as full payment. And he encouraged us to contact the hospital and anesthesia group and ask them to do the same. They agreed, and we never saw a bill from anyone. We were going to need a place to stay while we were there, so our pastor at the time was Brother Alvin Gaston. And he contacted a friend in Miami, a ministry friend. That friend had friends who owned a 3-bedroom condo in Miami, and they let us stay there for a month rent-free. Our little church, Travis Road Baptist, up the road, took up an offering to help with expenses. Family members and executives donated frequent flyer miles. We received grocery and restaurant gift cards. It was amazing to see God work out the finances when we trusted him. We frequently quoted the verse, "My God shall supply all your needs according to his riches and glory." God not only took care of the financial matters, he also helped us emotionally and spiritually. That ministry friend of Brother Alvin's came to the hospital and stayed with us the entire time Hannah was in surgery, both times we went to Miami. We also had a church friend, Shannon Nelson, whose aunt lived in Miami and happened to volunteer at the very hospital that we were going to be in. And guess where she was assigned on that day? Surgery waiting room. So she stayed with us, and she was a blessing and comfort to us. She even took Hannah's big brother Caleb to the zoo one day for us.